Tonight at 10, ministers strike a deal to avoid possible food shortages because of the startling rise in energy costs. Food production needs carbon dioxide, but high gas prices shut down the biggest supplier, leaving some food firms on the brink.
We're now pretty near empty on our stocks, and we're living hand to mouth.
The government's deal means carbon dioxide manufacture can restart, but financial support for the biggest producer will only last 3 weeks. Also tonight, Boris Johnson in America for talks at the White House plays down fears of an energy crisis back home. A BBC investigation finds children with mental health problems in England facing long waits for treatment. And the Canary holiday isle smashed by lava from a nearby volcano.
There's ash falling on my clothes, I can taste it in the air, and the whole time there's the thunderous rumble of the volcano in the background.
And coming up in the sport on the BBC News Channel, England are hit for 6. They lose the third one-day international against New Zealand by 3 wickets in Leicester.
Good evening. After emergency talks, the government has struck a deal with the US company that supplies most of the carbon dioxide used in food production in the UK. CO2 is a byproduct of the manufacture of fertiliser, but the recent sharp rise in gas prices forced one of the country's biggest suppliers, CF Industries, to stop production. Carbon dioxide is used in the drinks industry, as well as to prolong the shelf life of food. Ministers are giving limited financial support for 3 weeks to CF Industries to restart production. One food industry group had warned that without government intervention, gaps would appear on supermarket shelves within days. Our business editor Simon Jack has the very latest.
When you think of cheese, you probably don't consider carbon dioxide a vital ingredient. It's not in the cheese itself, but like many other food products, CO2 is used in the packaging process to extend shelf life. The boss of this cheese producer has been told by his supplier his CO2 deliveries are in jeopardy at a crucial time of year.
We're now pretty near empty on our stocks, and we're living hand to mouth, on a day-to-day basis. So at a time of year when we should be packing more and more products for export ready for Christmas, we're having to tap back the production based on some sort of forecast for CO2.
CF Industries, a US-owned company with plants in Cheshire and Teesside, produces 60% of the UK's CO2 as a byproduct of manufacturing fertiliser. It may be a byproduct to them, it's absolutely crucial to the economy, which is why the government had to do a deal to restart production fast. From the farmyard gate to the supermarket door, CO2 finds its way into processes and packagings throughout the food supply chain. And the fact the government has been locked in talks to try and figure out how to subsidise one company's gas bill shows you just how urgent they think the situation is and how pervasive and damaging high gas prices can be for the whole economy. Wholesale prices are now higher than companies are allowed to charge under a government cap, so many suppliers are going bust, leaving customers like Stacey having to pay more to a new supplier.
When I looked for a comparable deal on Sunday night, the price was going to cost me £550 more. If I was going to get a 12-month fixed tariff, it was going to cost over £900. Those prices have increased already, and many of the deals have actually disappeared. So I am now shackled to my gas meter.
The government price cap has already been increased and will take effect in October, but the calculation of that new cap didn't capture a 70% surge in wholesale prices in August. The regulator says it's likely that prices will rise again.
We've already announced a rise in the price cap that's coming in October, so that is already in play. And although there is a lot of cost pressure, and yes, that will feed through to bills, it's very early in the cycle and it's too early to predict what will happen next year. But of course, as the underlying costs change, ultimately that cost does feed through to bills.
As some smaller companies go bust, the boss of a challenger company that now rivals the giants say we mustn't go back to the days when a handful of powerful companies dominated the market.
We do not want an energy market that has insufficient competition. Right? We don't want an energy market which is made up of companies that are basically all the same. What we need is to have the diversity of customer offering
that we've got used to with competition.
The government insists that help for carbon dioxide producer CF is a one-off, as CO2 is critical to cool nuclear reactors, medicines and vaccines. The wider crisis in the energy market remains unresolved. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Well, Boris Johnson says the government will do all it can to protect consumers, but with prices rising for energy and food and reductions to universal credit on the way, some Conservatives are warning of a tough winter for many people. However, speaking in Washington, where he's holding planned talks with President Biden, Mr. Johnson said he rejects fears of difficult times ahead. The talks in America are expected to focus on the COP26 Global Climate Conference in Glasgow in November and the ongoing challenges in Afghanistan. Our political editor Laura Koonsberger sent us this report from Washington.
Even prime ministers have to use the sidewalk sometimes. The United Nations gathering snarls up New York's crazy traffic. But Boris Johnson can't look away from real problems much closer to home.
Prime Minister, you're over here.
The energy price rise as dizzying as this view.
We'll do what we can to protect consumers in this interim period. And I want to stress that it is an interim period. And I think what people want to see is the medium long-term strategy.
But what people at home want to know, Prime Minister, is what is going to happen to their energy bill.
Yes.
What is going to happen in the next few weeks and months? People at home are hearing about possible shortages on supermarket shelves. People are seeing energy companies go under.
First of all, the market across the world is going to start clearing these problems, and they will rectify themselves. But secondly, what it's showing is why it's absolutely right to be investing in wind, to be investing in solar, but also to be putting in nuclear. So if you look at our 10-point plan for the Green Industrial Revolution...
Forgive me, Prime Minister, I think at the moment people would like to know how they're going to put food on the table in the next few weeks and months, rather than thinking about a long-term 10-point plan.
Just on that, Laura, if I may, I don't believe that people will be short of food, and wages are actually rising now under this government, if that's what you're driving at.
But they are seeing a government that for millions of people are going to take away £20 a week. It's all very well for you to stand on the top of a skyscraper in New York and say you understand. If you really understood...
You're also on top of a skyscraper, and we're here to get the world to focus on tackling climate change.
Prime Minister,
and one of the things that we're doing is trying to get people to move away from hydrocarbons, from reliance on hydrocarbons, to putting in clean, green energy sources on which our country can rely for.
But Prime Minister, if you really say you understand the pressure on people at home, is there any chance the government might think again on universal credit, or is that decision absolutely closed?
We think, Laura, that the best thing we can do is help people into high-wage, high-skilled jobs. That is what is happening. Unemployment is falling very rapidly, jobs are being created, and wages are rising.
A senior industry source told me, though, the Prime Minister on his travels simply hasn't understood how serious the squeeze on energy and supply chains really is. Yet a journey of a few hundred miles to the White House, his priority tonight. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, was the welcoming party. The first time they'd met, seeming a friendly duo.
Mr. Prime Minister, it is an honour to welcome you to the White House. And as you will discuss with the President, the relationship between our two countries is a long and enduring one.
Even if the Prime Minister's delight at British beef exports seemed to cause her something of a chuckle.
We're seeing regular progress. The ban on beef, your curious ban on British beef, has been removed, which is a wonderful thing.
Yet there isn't much hope an actual trade deal could be done between the two countries fast. For British Prime Ministers, this location is about as box office as it gets. The main event, a one-on-one with the President, getting underway. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Washington, D.C.
President Biden has told the United Nations he'll double the amount of money the US is giving to help the developing world adapt to global warming. £8 billion will now go to a special fund. Our North America editor John Sopel is at the White House for us tonight. John, after criticism of his Afghanistan strategy, is this Joe Biden trying to show that America can still be counted on in a crisis?
Well, I think that Joe Biden wanted to show that America is back on the world stage, that it is working with its allies. And look, the announcement that came today on climate change and this $11 billion that would go to developing countries is exactly what Britain had been lobbying for. And probably Boris Johnson, just behind me in the White House, is probably thanking Joe Biden very much for that. You're right, there's been a lot of criticism over Afghanistan, but Joe Biden wanted to turn a page today. He wanted to be able to say, and he did, listen, this is the first time in 20 years that an American president has been able to stand up and say, we are not at war. And he talked about going from relentless wars to relentless diplomacy, working with allies to ensure that authoritarianism is beaten and that democracy prevails. He didn't mention China by name, but that is clearly what he intended when he was saying that. And he said, we don't want to go into any more Cold Wars or blocks that are set apart. And so I think that was all aimed at China. Now, all of this would get a lot of support normally. The problem is that Joe Biden's saying we're not going to act alone, we're going to work with our partners. Well, that didn't happen over Afghanistan. And that's why his speech today probably got 2 cheers rather than the full-throated 3.
OK, John, thank you. John Sopel there live at the White House. A third Russian man is facing charges over his alleged involvement in the Salisbury poisonings 3 years ago, which left 1 woman dead and 3 others critically ill. Security sources believe Denis Sergeyev led the team on the ground in Salisbury when Novichok poison was used against Sergei Skripal, a former Russian spy, and his daughter Yulia. Our security correspondent Gordon Carrera has more.
The third man, Denis Sergeyev, today charged with the Salisbury poisonings. It was March 2018 when deadly nerve agent was deployed on the streets of the city. The target, Sergei Skripal. He and his daughter fell ill after Novichok was smeared on his door handle. 4 months later, Dawn Sturgis died after she came into contact with a discarded perfume bottle used to carry it. Today, the Prime Minister called on Russia to act.
They should recognise that our sense that justice must be done is not abated. And Dawn Sturgis, an innocent member of the British public, died in that event, and we want to see those suspects handed over.
Police today released a new image of Sergeyev arriving at Heathrow on the Friday before the poisoning. The other 2 members of the team flew into Gatwick hours later. They were spotted heading to Salisbury and around the town. Sergeyev stayed in London the whole weekend, including spending time near here. But police say the 3 men did meet on multiple occasions in the city. And security sources have told me that Sergeyev was the on-the-ground operational commander for the team. Sergeyev is then seen leaving Heathrow for Moscow almost immediately after the poisoning. Police today confirmed all 3 were members of Russian military intelligence, the GRU, and had operated internationally. So who is Denis Sergeyev? He's a veteran of Russian special forces, who then joined Unit 29155 of the GRU, where he's now thought to be a Major General. The unit is said to be tasked with sabotage, subversion and assassination. Since Salisbury, European security services have been tracking its movements. This year it was linked to an explosion at a Czech arms depot, which killed 2 people in 2014, and to the attempted assassination of a Bulgarian arms dealer. The man seen in this CCTV may well be Denis Sergeyev, suspected of smearing poison on a car door handle. The first 2 Salisbury suspects appeared on Russian TV to claim they were just tourists visiting the cathedral, and Moscow has consistently denied any involvement. That means that despite today's accusation, the third man, also believed to be in Russia, is unlikely to face a British court. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
And Moscow has rejected what officials there call an unsubstantiated ruling by the European Court of Human Rights, which found that Russia was responsible for the killing of the former KGB officer Alexander Litvinenko in London in 2006. Mr. Litvinenko, who became a British citizen, was fatally poisoned with radioactive polonium-210, which was put in his tea. A public inquiry conducted a decade later concluded that the killing was probably approved by President Putin. The Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, has ordered an investigation into a data breach which could threaten the safety of more than 250 people in Afghanistan. They include dozens of Afghan interpreters who worked for British forces. The MOD has referred itself to the Information Commissioner's office, and one person has been suspended. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning's report contains some flashing images.
They CC by mistake all the emails.
It was an email that was supposed to reassure. Instead, it might have put Afghan interpreters at greater risk. When the Ministry of Defence sent the message to those still stranded, all 250 email addresses, some names and photos, could be seen by everyone receiving it. An interpreter we can't identify, currently in hiding in Afghanistan, received the email.
I felt shocked. I really felt, disappointed that how could they afford to make this serious mistake. Just when you think it can't get worse than this, I'm 100% sure that it will have a negative impact on our safety.
The interpreters have been told to change their email addresses. The Defence Secretary had to come to the Commons to explain.
It was brought to my attention at 2000 hours last night there'd been a significant data breach. To say, Mr. Speaker, I was angered by this was an understatement, and I immediately directed an investigation to take place.
One official has been suspended.
I apologise to those Afghans affected by this data breach, and with whom we are now working with them to provide security advice.
This stranded interpreter also received the email.
Do you accept the Defence Secretary's apology for this?
The apologise is not helping at the moment. As I say, they need to take action now to start the process of evacuation. These mistakes can cost the interpreter's life.
The MOD's apology is sincere and staff are said to be distraught. But while the military evacuation was praised, the reality is hundreds of interpreters and others have been left behind in increasing fear and desperation with no clear path to get them out.
The government admits it's lost contact with 8 interpreters it couldn't evacuate. And it's not just the data breach, but the perceived breach of trust that's left lives at risk.
When I see their carelessness and their neglect, I don't think we're going to be, in the UK in the near future.
Britain promises to get them out however long it takes, but every day is dangerous on the run from the Taliban. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
Here, the government's latest coronavirus figures show there were 31,564 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period across the UK. That means in the past week there was an average of 31,083 new cases per day. More than 7,700 people are in hospital with COVID, according to the most recent data. Another 203 deaths have been recorded in the latest 24-hour period. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. The average number of deaths per day in the last week is now 144. On vaccinations, 89.4% of people aged 16 or over have had their first jab, while 81.9% are now double vaccinated. Children with mental health problems are facing long waits for treatment in England, with parents saying they're desperate for help. A BBC investigation has found that a fifth of patients had to wait longer than 12 weeks. Our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson has been meeting some of those keen to get treatment for their children. Her report contains some details you may find upsetting.
When things get tough, this is where Sue comes. Her teenage daughter, who's self-harmed, has been waiting for mental health treatment for almost 2.5 years.
When she does receive that help, we don't know now how she's going to engage with that because of the wait. And as I say, I do wonder if, as a result of those delays, she might end up needing medication because the anxiety is now so high.
It's estimated in England 1.5 million under 18-year-olds have a probable mental health disorder. But in the year to 2021, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, CAMS, saw just under a third of them.
Your teachers here really care about you.
Some teachers are so concerned, they're telling parents not to bother with CAMS.
When I have parents that are in a really desperate situation, I'm often reluctant to refer them on to these services because I know the length of time that they'll wait. And sometimes there just isn't that opportunity to wait. You need that support right there, right then.
The government says due to the pandemic, it's treating more under-18s than ever and extending help to an additional 345,000 children and young people.
We have a young girl who is set upon dying.
Sandra, not her real name, has to lock away the knives and medicines at home. Her 16-year-old daughter has waited 3 years for treatment despite attempting suicide 17 times.
The consequence of having to wait this long is that it's done an awful lot of psychiatric damage to her, really.
How painful is that to you?
It's devastating. She is so talented. She's amazing at art and music. She's really creative. But when you are constantly trying to just keep your daughter alive another day to hope that someone will give her some therapy, sorry.
Sandra and Sue's daughters have finally been offered some treatment, but it's thought many hundreds of thousands of other children are still without the help they need. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
And if you've been affected by any of the issues in that report, for help and advice, just go to our website, bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can call for free at any time a helpline on 0800 066 066. The parents of a teenager who died after being struck by a car in Northamptonshire in 2019 say they've reached a civil settlement for damages against the woman alleged to have killed their son. Harry Dunn, who was 19, died when his motorbike was hit by a car driven by the wife of an American diplomat near RAF Croughton. Ansikulas then left the UK claiming diplomatic immunity. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says preventing women from accessing education in neighbouring Afghanistan would be un-Islamic. He's calling for the Taliban to respect human rights. In an interview with our World Affairs editor John Simpson, he laid out the conditions that would need to be met for Pakistan to formally recognise any new Taliban government.
In Peshawar, on Pakistan's northwest frontier, Afghanistan feels very close. The streets are thronged with Afghan refugees. In the 1990s, the Taliban had their origins in the Afghan refugee camps here, and Pakistan has always been accused of setting up the Taliban and helping them take power in Afghanistan, something Pakistan denies. But when the Taliban were thrown out in 2001, Pakistan's influence in Afghanistan fizzled out for 20 years. In our interview, Imran Khan clearly didn't want to seem to be too close to the Taliban, but he was careful not to be too critical of them either, over the question of the rights of Afghan women, for instance.
The women are very strong. I feel give them time and they will assert their rights.
How much time? Years?
A year, 2 years, 3 years. At the
3
moment,
years.
But at the moment, John, it's just too early to say anything, because it's just barely been a month after 20 years of civil war. They have come back into power.
The Taliban, the word just means Islamic students, originally owed their existence as a movement to religious schools in Pakistan like this one, the Zubaria in Peshawar, where they were recruited and radicalized. The main teacher, Sheikh Rahimullah, even helped the Taliban to distribute the weapons they captured from American soldiers. The previous Taliban government didn't understand the system, he says. This time they do understand politics and international relations. They aren't as harsh now as they were before. The new Taliban leaders in Afghanistan are certainly trying to give the outside world the impression that they've changed. Imran Khan hopes they have.
It's very encouraging. They have said they will have an inclusive government. They have said they'll give women can work, can have education. They will give amnesty to everyone. The soil won't be used for terrorism by anyone. These are encouraging statements.
So you're approving the way the Taliban are operating?
No, I'm approving of what they have said. No one can tell where Afghanistan goes from here. But what we hope and pray that finally after 40 years, the people of Afghanistan will have peace and stability.
But the Taliban didn't bring peace and stability before, and there's no evidence they can do it this time. In that case, it wouldn't just be Afghanistan that suffered, it'd be Pakistan as well. John Simpson, BBC News, Islamabad.
Another village on the Canary island of La Palma has been evacuated because of the ongoing eruption of a nearby volcano. Residents were ordered to leave El Paso after lava flows from the Cumbre Vieja volcano. More than 6,000 people have fled and hundreds of homes have already been destroyed since Sunday. Well, our correspondent Dan Johnson is on La Palma for us tonight. Dan.
Yes, Clive, we've had this amazing natural fireworks show for 3 days and 3 nights now. It is absolutely mesmerising. It's hard to take your eyes off it, but of course it is destructive because you can see the lava flowing downhill there. That has scarred the landscape and it's torched everything in its path. And there have been more earth tremors and further lava flows, which suggest this spectacular show won't be over anytime soon. And today we were in the village of Todorco, which is right down at the head of the lava and just before that village got smothered.
On La Palma's volcanic hillsides, it's time to move. More families and more communities are packing up and getting out. I don't even know where to take my things, this woman says. The village is being cleared in a last dash for people to grab whatever they can.
The flames and the lava are really close. That's why there's such a risk to these properties and why people are making every effort to get out. Being here for just a couple of minutes, you get a sense of the risk because there's ash falling on my clothes. I can taste it in the air, and the whole time there's the thunderous rumble of the volcano in the background. So that is why people are loading up and going.
But leaving is painful, and there's a sense of panic here at times. Basilio's desperately helping his dad Antonio, who's lived here for over 40 years, and can't believe it's ending like this.
I am angry with the authorities. We could have done this without so much stress, without running. I don't know where I'm going to live. And now what?
This is what? More homes destroyed, more communities that will have to be abandoned. And here's the molten lava that's on the move, a slow-motion menace, inching relentlessly downhill. This is a live geology lesson in nature's unstoppable forces. And it's not just property. Everything here is being shaken. Dan Johnson, BBC News, La Palma.
That's it. Now on BBC One, time for the news where you are. Have a very good night.